What is up, people of the pod? Welcome back to another episode of D3 Yappers. This is episode 3. We might be D3 runners, but we all know we're really D1 Yappers at heart. So we've got a very exciting episode on tap today. Noah, why don't you tell us where we're recording from?
We're actually recording from the basement of the Tobin household in St. Mary's, Ohio.
What have we been up to in St. Mary's?
Just a lot of family time and grinding and some sickness and health.
Yeah. We've been up here for
lots
Thanksgiving.
Lots of Big B coffee.
Yes, lots of Big B coffee. Been up here for Thanksgiving, living it up.
Been here since Wednesday.
Yeah, we left on Wednesday.
We cooked dinner for the family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tell the people about what you've been cooking up. So, the inspiration, all of it.
Yeah, so my inspiration, I wanted to cook something that Faith likes. So she's a big tofu person. So found a recipe for sloppy joe because we were walking through the store and I saw a big tub of like sloppy joe sauce. And I was like, oh, I should try to make a vegan or vegetarian, whatever you want to call it, sloppy joe. So tofu sloppy joe. Tofu joe.
Yeah.
Is what I made, and it's pretty freaking good.
It was fire. So we had that Monday, and then we made it again
on Wednesday.
Yeah, for pre-Thanksgiving Tobin dinner on Wednesday night.
The Tobin family has no clue what tofu is, so they're all pretty shocked that they liked it.
Our worlds just collided.
Everybody had a terrible, terrible first time experience with tofu, so I kind of like.
You brought it back.
I helped them not demonize it anymore.
It was good. And then I was like, I think you should make this on Sunday and we can put it on top of the chickpea pasta that I like. And you're like, whoa, we've made this like way too much. Let's not go too big too soon. But
don't want to hate it.
But it's also really good. So we did that. And then Thursday was obviously Thanksgiving. So we had the Minster turkey trot. You all need to give me the most Strava kudos ever for this race. We were going to go do it as like a tempo, as like a workout. And let me tell you, I was fighting demons that day. I woke up so congested, out of my mind, and was just in total denial because it's race day, so you've got to be. And I just like absolutely like gave life on this tempo effort.
Honestly, such an awful race.
Like weather-wise,
usually a really good race. I mean, Minster in my area is pretty notorious for like it's flat, so like lots of wind, not a lot of blockage of wind. But not only that, but like on top of that, there was like some high wind gust along with like some rain.
Yeah.
And really, really cold.
Oh no, that's the next day. It was the flurries.
Yeah, really, really cold temperatures as well. So we were on the starting line. They had to take down the blow up finish line.
Because it kept blowing over.
Because it kept blowing over. The starting pistol didn't work well, like didn't work at all. Even the microphones weren't working well. Everything was just not going well. People were like cutting the course at the end because it was so terrible. Like the walkers weren't even like finishing the whole course. But I ended up getting the win. I ran 15:24 was my chip time, and it was good. Coach didn't want me. Well, coach was like 15:30s would be good, is what he said. So. And the course is a little short.
Yeah, it's a smidge short.
So I think that was perfect. And then we had a little mini workout afterwards. We were doing 2 to 4 sets of 3 minutes on, 2 minutes off, and that was probably harder than
100%
harder than the turkey trot.
Also, when you hear 2 to 4 rounds of, for us in our mindset, that just translates to 4 rounds of. Let's be real.
Correct. I kept asking you. I was like, "Are you gonna do more than 2?" And you're like, "I might just." You kept like jokingly saying you're gonna do 2, and in my head I was like, "If you do 2, I'm doing 2." But we got going, and we got past the first 2, and we're like, "Well, what's another 2?"
Yeah.
So we finished it out.
Just one more, just a few more minutes. So
we did the work. The work was done.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty, but we got it.
Got us mileage very quickly.
Yeah.
So we were able just to go back to the CRV.
Yeah.
And hop in there with my brother and my cousin, and then we got some leftover yogurt.
Oh, well, okay.
Oh.
You know, pro runners, they're all about winning stuff to sustain their like lives. We won 4 pumpkin pies total between the 4 of us, so that's pretty good. And we left with a ton of yogurt. So I think we're like
Well, and
producing
this year the
breadwinners in
pumpkin
this
pies
sport.
were like homemade pumpkin
It was
pies.
gas. I thought
They
it was
were
a really good
pies.
pumpkin pie, honestly.
Last year they handed them out in like the tins that you would buy them in at the store, so obviously they were store bought, which is fine. It's a free friggin' pumpkin pie. But this year they're literally literal pastry boxes.
Yeah.
And it was like you could just tell from the top how like they looked so fresh.
They were like dense pies.
They
too,
were very dense
which I'm
too.
all for that.
So.
But yeah, the usual road racing scene is like, you know, people hang around after, yap it up.
It's and like a party.
Yeah, and this time like people finished and just like straight up left. Like it was disgusting weather.
We were done. So the race started at 9. We were done with our workout around 10 o'clock.
Yeah, we did the race and then did the workout on the course again, and we were passing walkers, and some of them were just kind of like leaving the course.
Yeah.
But then we were out by...
This race was pretty big too. That's why it started late, because there were so many people in the line, which was whatever.
But we were freezing.
We were freezing our ass off. And so after that, like, I would expect that it would have taken longer, but no, by 10 o'clock, everybody was out of there. I've never seen that before. It was just that miserable.
Anyway, I was out there fighting demons, woke up super congested, ran 17:43, which was okay. It was what it needed to be on the day, since we weren't trying to go like super all out anyway.
The technical 5K PR is only like 16:34.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's only like a minute so slower, so I'd say that's tempo effort.
Yeah, I feel like it was.
Plus, in that one,
it was what we needed on the day.
I can briefly touch on how the course was laid out. So you basically start at this high school, and you run out of this parking lot, and you, within like less than 100 meters, there's basically a 90-degree turn, and then after that, there's like another 90-degree turn, and then a 90-degree turn left, and then you go straight for like a whole probably a mile and a quarter, and then you take a right turn. You basically make a big rectangle, and I was flying. I was flying down the first mile, and I came through the first mile.
You basically did a time trial this whole thing, but it was also a workout, so I mean, it makes it better.
Yeah, it did not feel that hard until the wind hit. Then it was kind of...
Second mile was really hard.
But I didn't feel like I was racing.
Yeah.
The first mile I felt like I was, because I came through the first mile. At one point, it said I was going like 4:45 pace. I was like, oh, this is pretty easy. Like, this felt pretty comfortable and control. And then the wind hit me a little bit, but not a whole lot before the turn. And I came through the mile in like 4:53. I was like, oh. I was like, we're gonna get faster. Like, I just felt really good. Take the right turn. The wind started hitting me a little more. I was like, okay. I was like, maybe after the turn, like, it won't be as windy. No, that's where the wind was all coming from. I take one turn, my freaking watch goes from me running like 450 pace to going like 520. I was like, this is bad. I looked back because I was like, I want to see, but I already had like a pretty decent lead at that point, and I think second place ran like,
you were like 2 minutes up.
Yeah, like 16, and I was 15:24. So, but
yeah,
I was able to rally the last mile and run under 5:10 for the last mile. So
I was happy with my last mile too. I finally was like, okay, I'm gonna catch some bodies here, catch some dudes. First female, so maybe I gotta pat myself on the back there.
You should. It's a hard race.
Yeah, but I think we described it as miserable fun, where something like is so not ideal conditions and feelings wise that it's just like funny and you can't like not laugh about it.
Oh, like when the wind hit me at first, I actually started chuckling.
It's just like, well, like, this would happen. Like, right. What can you do? Anyway, ran the workout, the fartlek. Not gonna lie, I was literally running like 6:30 pace for these ons and felt like I was absolutely suffering. If you guys can't tell by my cough, I was sick as frick then the rest of the day. Had 2 hours to get in on the bike. Absolutely suffered. The watts were not there. The watts were not crushed, but we won the pie and then just hung out. So, turkey trot, mission was accomplished. Work was done. Pie was won. Had 2 Thanksgiving celebrations on Thursday, so that was pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. Lots of good food to go around. Need all the carbs, obviously. But before the turkey trot, we left the people off last week. Unless, do you have any other Thanksgiving or turkey trot notes?
That's all I got.
All right, yeah. last week, a week ago on Saturday, we raced the NCAA Division III National Championship for cross country. It was the whole week experience was pretty awesome. I think we can agree. We drove down in 2 vans.
Mhm.
So we were in a van with Joshua Cyrus, who you guys heard from on the pod last week. We ate a lot of good food, had a lot of good coffee. Shout out
a lot of Taco Bell.
Ziggy's Coffee.
Oh, that
really
coffee
good.
place
What was that
so
drink
good.
that we got? Gingerbread something?
The frosted gingerbread.
Oh, but we got it hot. It says frosted, but it was hot.
Right.
It was really good. Shout out Josh for going and getting us coffee a couple times while we were out running so that we would have a warm drinky to come back to. That was also the best cake pop I've had in my life. It was from Ziggy's Coffee. So good.
You know what I'm thinking of right now?
Are you thinking about the same thing as me?
Oh, yeah.
Should we say it?
The comment. Yeah, just say it. It's funny.
I need to hire Ziggy's Coffee to make my wedding cake.
Yeah.
It was so good. It was so moist and like.
I'm sorry. I'm a child. It was so good though. Okay. Okay.
Censor the pod.
You better cut that out.
I'll put some static over it. It'll be fine. Oh, okay. Anyway, world's best cake pop, Ziggy's Coffee. They also had chocolate espresso covered beans, which were
those
great.
Were good. Yeah.
We ate Taco Bell 2 days out before the race because that's our old reliable. We have it all the time in Wilmington. Then we had a great Mexican place the night before because I'm at a 100% success rate with bean burritos the night before a race. I've never lost a race after eating a bean burrito the night before.
This is true.
So
then we had Taco Bell for lunch after the Nationals race, and we had it for dinner that night as well.
What's your go-to Taco Bell order?
My go-to Taco Bell order is probably like 2 chalupas, whether they're chicken or beef, doesn't really matter, supreme. And then you got to have the spicy potato soft tacos. So I usually get like 3 of those. And then I probably get, which right now it seems like it might be a permanent item on the menu now, but you got to get the nacho fries. And not just the small, you got to get the large. Once they offered more than one size, you got to get the large. It's America. What about you?
You know, I'm a big bean burrito girly, obviously. I think Taco Bell bean burritos are probably my favorite food in this whole world because it's not like a normal bean burrito where you got to have a fork to eat it. You just like bite it and it oozes out like magma.
You dropped your little secret recipe on what you do for Max Hoffman in a Strava post.
The texture, the consistency, it's fire. So I do bean burrito, no cheese because me and dairy don't do so great. And I add pico, Mexican pizza sauce, lettuce, guac, and I grill it. Ask for it grilled. The app makes it so easy. I get 2 of them. If I want to live on the edge, which I definitely did before Nationals, I got those nacho fries, or I just smooch on your nacho fries, but with ketchup because it's this.
I like when you mooch and when we share food because it doesn't make me feel as bad about myself.
Or like if you make stuff, or like when we buy bread that's all different size cuts, and you just grab whatever size you want, and it's like whatever. Carbs are carbs.
Right.
Anyway, so yeah, we ate Taco Bell for lunch and then dinner after the race. Let's talk a bit about the Nationals race experience itself. We talked to D3 Glory Days, which was super cool. Awesome people. We love what they do for the sport. Also, our name is in no way meant to copy them. We strive for a totally different vibe because we're yappers. But yeah, all super cool. Go listen to their content. We love them. They did a fun interview with us before the race that we can definitely link for you guys to watch. And then after the race, that also has our coach Josh on his knee scooter in the back.
He's struggling.
That was the most chaotic interview ever.
Yeah, Faith picked up a tube of toothpaste and also got talked to by this guy. Basically was like hollering behind her, hey, stop, hurry. And then she stopped, and Emily Richards is just looking at him. And it just felt like somebody was it felt like a family member was trying to talk to us, and then somebody random just interrupted you, and like the person that doesn't know the other person just kind of like awkwardly standing there. Like we're getting interrupted mid-interview. You don't want to tell that fan that wants to congratulate you on like winning a title to, hey, I'm busy right now. So props for you for talking to him and and giving him his little 2 cents. He asked where Wilmington was, so she had to tell him where it was. And
it was also just so cold. Like that whole day was so cold and wet. We were just trying to cool down and get warm clothes on before awards.
And then they started the awards early when you were cooling down with me.
And I was like, I just put warm clothes on.
And you totally just jumped into that mud puddle because it was a certainty. It had to happen
to get over there in time. It's also really funny. I was wearing a Stop Tobin shirt. Shout out to our fans who made the Stop Tobin and Running on Faith
Shout out
shirts.
to Eric, Haley, and Dane.
Yeah, they're awesome. We love them. And our coach Ron was yelling like, "They're starting without you!" Like across the course. I'm like sprinting to get over there.
Like,
I had to go around this fencing, and he's like, "Please tell me you have something Wilmington on under that."
And I was like, "No, like she should have went up there with
get the trophy and
but on the back the shirt did say Running on Faith.
Yeah,
so.
which is kind of cool. Actually, very cool. So anyway, super cold. And that was the other thing with this interview. We were like walking in it. It kind of made me think of those Vogue interviews where people are just like walking around their house, answering questions, and doing random shit.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, let's recap the races because that's probably what the people want to hear about.
I can recap yours first if you want.
Okay.
All right. So wow. I came up to the race beforehand and I was talking to Faith and I was like getting her ready, and I'm pretty sure we prayed before she started like we usually do before every race, and had a little nice moment, kind of just reassured her and told her, I was like, you can win this, like that you have the tools to go out there and just grind and hurt, like you'll hurt more than anybody else will. After that I watched the gun go off and had to go into my warm-up. So I wasn't able to witness a whole lot, but I do know one of our buddies, Sammy Alexander, aka Sammy Buckets, aka Sammy Shoots, gets a lot of pictures for us. Cool guy, genuine human being. He texted Faith, I guess. We found this out after the race. After about 2K in?
Yeah, it was 11:07. The race started at 11.
Yeah, it was 11:07. 7 minutes into the race, he texts her because the live results are showing splits, and he's quote unquote says, "Damn, already 7 seconds on the field" or something like that. Funny guy, but it was a cool thing for people to kind of joke about it, and because that's just Faith. Like I'm gonna dive into that first K. So the first K into the race, she, at least from what you've told me, you felt like you weren't aerobic at all. So, I mean, you were weren't anaerobic.
Yeah.
What it is. You weren't anaerobic. You were all aerobic. You're like, this feels good. And you had 3 seconds at a K. And you're like, why is nobody else going with me? And so then you kind of you didn't really there wasn't a move. There wasn't a blow your mind move or anything. It was just a gradual increase. I kind of feel like it was how I raced conference, except I won by 19 and you won nationals by 42 seconds. It's a big difference there. But you just kind of went away with it, and it goes to speak to what you were telling me about how you felt. You're always listening to people's breathing. You're always listening to everything, and you just didn't hear anybody behind you anymore. I think you questioned yourself a little bit, but it was more so questioning everybody else. You were like, is nobody really going to go with you? And there's a big testament to that, to high performing meets with high performance athletes. When you're fit, you're in shape, you've been there before, but still this was your first cross country season, and you kind of just you had that unsure feeling because you were really surprised. I mean, when you make a move, and I can kind of elaborate on this from I always talk about my first full 8K, first 8K of the season, the Grizzly Invite, when I made my move. Nobody was expecting it, and I kind of just ran away with it. And it's one of those things that goes to confidence. If you make a move at an odd point in a race and you're just really confident with it, and you are really strong, and you assert that move, nobody will most likely go with you unless they make the same decision, which not a lot of times people do. But that's what was different about yours, was you didn't really, your decision was made after you already had the lead. You're like, well, I'm going to go to the well and I'm going to hurt. So you came through 5K in 16,
41, I think.
41, 42, which is funny because that's like a little less than 10 seconds away from your actual 5K PR that I watched you run at WashU. And it's just kind of funny how far you've come. So I'm just really proud of how you ran that race. And, you know, you came back with it's funny, I was warming up at that point and I saw you on the screen. You already had like 30 seconds on everybody. And I stopped by our coach Josh and I was like, that's my girl. And then he's like, lock in. I was locked in. I was just really proud. And I came over there to watch the finish and you were all firing on all cylinders. And Nathan Tassi came up to me after I watched you pass and I was finishing my warm up and he was like, congratulations, Noah. And it's just kind of funny, but we talked about this. Your wins are my wins and my wins are your wins. So very impressed with how you raced that. Very gutsy race, especially after your quote from regionals. I feel like I raced like a B word. And it's like, yeah, we want to go out there and we want to, it's kind of like how, you know, Ethan Gregg talked about his senior year or his junior year. I forget which one it was, but he always talked about how like people asked him what his strategy was going to be at nationals. And he's like, I'm going to make it fast. He's like, I'm going to run a fair race. And like, he didn't put up with the championship style racing. And like, I respect that a lot about people. And that's exactly how we feel about things. Like we hate to run that way. And some might say it's the smarter way to run, but at the same time, like we both are firm believers in, you know, the best runner should win.
Yeah.
You know, like
100%.
I can accept defeat if it was somebody's absolute best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good race. Definitely heard all the fans out there. Really thankful for all the Wilmington people who came out. I think that was the really cool thing is it almost felt like we were on home turf in a way with all the people we had. We had Shadrack, our strength guy, out there. All our families were there. Simon and Madison were there. The whole Hayes fam was there. We already shouted out Haley, Dane, and Eric making the T-shirts. So that was really cool.
All of our family.
Yeah, our throws coach, Tristan, was out there. Chelsea Sykes was out there. Just really big group. And the other thing with
president,
D3, President Corey Cockrell,
the assistant AD and the AD,
Matt Croce. Yeah, we just have such a great group at Wilmington. They actually recognized us at the basketball game this past week at men's
really
basketball.
Cool.
So we made a post about that. If you haven't seen it on the Instagram, go follow D3 Yappers on the gram. But yeah, really cool day. And I think the D3 community is really cool in that I never felt alone during that race. Like, even when I would pass people from other schools, they would cheer for me, especially if they were other teams in the OAC or in our region that knew Wilmington, like they were cheering. So your race, I mean, we talked about like shared wins and also like shared losses. So it was like a tough day because ultimately it was the end of your collegiate cross country career, and it was a really hard day, I think. Out there on the course, like the men got out super aggressively and you were kind of in a rough spot at the start. Like I remember like watching on the first stretch and you were very like middle of the pack, and I remember seeing guys that you would race against earlier in the season definitely closer up towards the front, and I was like, like he can move up, like believe, like that's all the stuff I'm trying to yell. It's like unwavering faith, like believe,
dependence
like,
on the Lord,
like you can move, like you could do it, trying to give you whatever I can out there. And ultimately you did move up really well. Honestly, I think my dad, Bob Duncan, probably said it best, is it was the smartest race you've run, but also knowing you as an athlete, smartest is not always what's best for you. You have to be a little bit reckless, and you're good at being reckless. So you ran a really great race for most people, and even then, I don't think it was like a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I mean, you still ended at the national championship, but it wasn't the typical Noah Tobin racing style, and I think a lot of that stemmed from where you got out in the race. But
I mean, if I was on one of the teams in the top 10, like I'm a really solid guy, like a solid 2 to 4 guy in the top 5.
Exactly. But came away 56th place, about 10 seconds out of an All-American. And it's funny, it was the same place you were 2 years ago when you were at the NCAA Championship. But I think it's hard because we both know you're better than that. And I think we just have to accept, like, on that day, that's the amount of people that were better than you, but that's only on that day. And one race doesn't define you. And that's the thing that's tough with a national championship, is that's the one that people are going to remember, but you still got all the indoor and outdoor. And I think you learned a lot about yourself this season and your grit. And I think I'm most proud of you for that race because a lot of guys who you started off around didn't move up. And you could tell you were still just fighting for every place you could get and staying engaged in the race so you could finish with dignity, knowing you kind of put it all out there. And in cross country, when you get buried, it's really hard to keep that hope and keep your eyes on the light at the end of the tunnel.
And we kind of talked about this a little bit the other day, but like a lot of people will relate to this if they ever hear this, but you know, it's hard. If you know the outcome of the race, would you still race the race?
We talked about that so much this week.
So it's like if I knew going into this national meet that I was going to finish 56 and that was the best I was going to do on that day, which I mean, we've talked about it too, like if we race this race 10 times, you know, not and like one of those times I have to be top 40. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's going to be different every
time. One of those times was the time that actually happened, and that was that I got 56. But it's like, would you still race that race if you knew no matter what you're going to get 56? And obviously, like, my answer is yes, because it's experience. It's the end of my career. I mean, it's not where I wanted to be, but it's where I was supposed to be. Like you said, maybe if I went out in 59 seconds, the first 400 meters, which I didn't want to do, sometimes, you know, those are judgment calls. And I knew I made the wrong judgment call for myself as a racer, but the right judgment call as somebody who was trying to like focus and listen to, you know, wise people that have been there before. Now I've been there before, and D3 Gordes asked me like, what's it like? You know, you have some experience. And quite honestly, I really don't have experience. Like I have experience, but you know, I got 56. That race in, you know, East Lansing, there was a foot of snow on the ground. I was 50th at the mile. I finished 56th. I was with the same 6 guys the whole race. My experience was knowing that you can't really move in the national meet. So I guess that's what one thing that helped was I was actually able to move in the national meet this year, and it was way faster this year.
Yeah.
And like that course is, it's deceivingly hard.
It's hilly. It ends uphill. It starts uphill.
I would say that's probably, to me personally, probably the hardest part though, is that stretch. The starting stretch, because you also have to come through it again.
Well, the men run it 3 times. Yeah.
We come through it 3 times. The finish, honestly, I hate it. I hate the finish. You know, it's good for spectators. As a course for cross country though, it's great. But as somebody who's racing it, like, you know, that's something you got to work on, is an uphill finish. It's like you can't really plan for that though, because you're talking about being, you want to be at your best. You want to be able to make a powerful, explosive move at the end of a race. But imagine doing that, and it's the last like 500 meters is a straightaway, which is already deceiving, and it's uphill. It's like you're getting smacked and tasked with 2 like really hard things, and you know you did well with it. But I mean, like we said, you didn't give anybody the chance to capitalize on you if you were dead. And we talk about that a lot. Like, you know, we don't really have to depend on our kicks a whole lot, you know, because we set ourselves up with success. Like when I was up with 800 meters to go at OACs, like I had won the race already. Like I didn't need to do anything special at that point to win the race.
Yeah.
So it was like I didn't need that. And I think a lot of our wins this season, we weren't ever really out kicking people. And so maybe just being more aware of that, but that's what like drives me crazy about nationals is I was always putting hay in the bank, putting money in the bank early in the race, which is like not a style of running a lot of people choose, but you know, if I could do one thing differently, that's probably what I would do. But you know, because everybody always talks about how, you know, the difference at the 1K from being, you know, first and 100th is 5 seconds. So here's my devil's advocate. Okay, so then what's the difference between being first? Like, why not be first and have space? Yeah. Have room in the front for you to move.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like there's 2, you know, we always, when coaches talk about it with us, when our coach talks about it with us, we're always talking about how like using that for motivation as like, you can move up.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot. But here's also the other thing. Can you though?
How much?
There's
How
a
much
wall
is
there
reasonable?
of 100 guys.
Yeah, and
So
they're not just guys; they're the
they're
100 best guys in the nation. And I think that was one thing you said that really stuck out. Is you're like, people are saying, "Oh, it's just 10 more spots," but like everybody in your position around you is thinking, "Oh, it's just 10 more spots
until I'm All-American."
So you're all trying to move up, and you get one, and they'd come right back. Like, yeah, it's just a very tough spot to be in. But I think what you said earlier that was really cool too, and we talked about this in the broader scheme of things, like, if you knew the outcome, would you do it again? Like, would you run the race again? And obviously the answer is yes. And I think we especially talked about, look at the season like as a whole, like every mile you've run, every lift, every sit up, every crunch, everything that you did, like every bit of like mobility, everything that went into the season, all the 5 a.m. runs that you did, all the doubles, like, would you do it again? Would you grind that hard knowing the outcome? And ultimately, like, the answer is yes, because, like,
you want to say no because you're like, that's stupid. Why would anybody who does that's insane? And it's like, well, it's what happened. So it's like, the only difference is you didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's like,
no regrets on the journey. And it's like, I think you handled yourself very well at the meet, very professionally, especially knowing how many people we had there around us and how overwhelming that can be when it's not the day you want. So I think you were super stand-up and awesome with that. And I think, again, enjoying that journey and realizing that the journey is everything you wanted. And at the end of the day, I think Sunday it was really cool to think, like, people ask me, they're like, oh, like, well, what's going to happen now? What changes? Like, does it feel different? And at the end of the day, Sunday, we woke up, we ran my favorite long run route. And I know this is probably easy for me to say because, like, I had a good day, but, like, and we made pancakes, went to church, and then went and hung out with friends and family. And we didn't really talk about the race that much when we were hanging out with people. And at church, we didn't talk about it too much. Like,
I think you need to have a good balance when it comes down to things.
We just,
even if you're the national champion.
We just went back to our normal life that we know and love, and it was pretty awesome.
I bet you Christian Patska probably feels the same way. You know what I mean? All those guys. I mean, I know Alex Phillip probably feels the same way because the man had offers to go, take a chance and be a professional athlete, be a professional runner. But, some people, like, they enjoy this little life that we got.
Yeah. We went on a bike ride that day too. It's good.
Now, obviously, we want to try and become that at some point in our lives, but like there's a certain point where like I understand completely why Alex Phillip did make the decision that he did. I have a lot of respect for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a lot of people make that choice. A lot of people don't even get the chance to make that choice sometimes.
Yeah.
But like it's it's really hard to balance. Like I was just talking upstairs like 5 minutes before we started the podcast about how 2022 I was in such like a bad spot, like spiritually, mentally, and it was like a very successful season. So like all my success and my value came from like running and people's opinions about me. But everybody's opinions were great because I was running great. And so it was like there was nothing bad. But when I got hurt after that season and people's opinions weren't really voiced / like everything was just like not good. And like it took me to a low place mentally and physically. And so it's like Coach Josh Cyrus, said it best. He came up to me after the race and he's like, after all, like the OAC title, getting third at regionals, after we talked earlier in the other podcast about me crapping myself, like perseverance, like pushing through those limits, still finishing well and high, and then like going to nationals and not getting what I wanted and what I thought I was prepared to do. And then he's at the end of the day, he's like, for people who don't know me and know my story, like I grew up in the church and I've always been religious, but people struggle. And so earlier in the season I got baptized again. And Josh, which he's a great, amazing person, and he did help me make that, not really come to that conclusion, but like support that decision in my life to get baptized again. And that, he said, as a coach, was his most proud moment of my career. And I think that, like shed some light on what matters. At the end of the day, it's like what I talked about in my Strava post, which I might be ruining some things later in the podcast, but I talked about how I like kind of, not maybe to a brutal I'm going to be brutal here. What I don't mean it to be brutal, but I used to like pity / like not laugh, but for lack of better words, laugh at people who like confided in God when things didn't go their way. Like I was like, oh, that's such a cop out. Like, oh, you got second place, you didn't win the race, and you're like, but I thank God every day for my body and stuff. I'm like, oh wow, that's just something losers say.
I used to be like that too. Like you try and take solace in something else
because you're trying to stay, level-headed. You're trying to stay like you got the killer mentality. But it's like at the end of the day, the more I read in the Bible, the more I've learned since I've been saved. It's like, like it's so important at the end of the day, because we always say all the time, once you finish that race with the PR, like, when we go to, Grand Valley this coming week, and let's say you run under 16 minutes, you're going to be like, oh, and Ron will probably be guilty of this too. Let's say there's a weird thing that you do during the race that might have cost you like a couple seconds. And I'll be like, oh, you could have ran 15:50 if you did this.
Yeah.
And you're also in the back of your head and be like, oh, I can't wait till I go 15:30. And it's like once you get to 15:30, you're like, oh, I can't wait till I go 15:20. And once you go 15:20, you're like, oh, I can't wait to be like one of the few women in D3 history to go under 15 flat, which I don't think that's ever happened.
There have been 3 under 16 minutes. So
yeah, so that's the first step, obviously. But I'm just saying, like in like that perspective. So like for me, when I went 14:34, after like that was the first race I ever went under 15 minutes. So it was like I blew it out of the water. So I was like, ooh, I can go faster. And it's just like one of those things. It's like you'll never fully be content with how fast you run ever in your life. I'm a full believer of that. Even guys like Grant Fisher, and Nico Young, running under 27 minutes for 10K.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, how much more can we push that barrier? And it's like they're never going to be content about it.
And when you're old and slow, you're just going to set other goals, like how much farther can I go?
100%. Yeah. So then it comes down to like, what can you find contentment in? And that's Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And I think how Jesus impacts your whole life. Like I think at the end of the day, like I think about that Sunday after the race again. At the end of the day, after your season is done, if you can go back to your life and think like, people say like, oh, what's going to change now? If you can go back to your life and not want any of it to change, I feel like you're in a pretty good spot to have success long term.
I think the one thing I would touch on that is I don't like everything that I've done in my life. Like there's some parts obviously you wish you could kind of change.
Well, yeah.
But at the same time, I don't regret the person I am today because of all those things.
Yeah.
So it's like I ask for forgiveness and for strength for all the things that I've went through and stuff. And it's like, God helps with everything. If you can't be content to where you've gotten, I feel like you can't go any farther.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think, don't stay content. Like obviously, like when we're racing, like you can't stay content because you have to stay in a constant state of uncomfortableness.
Right. Same with training. You're always trying to move that needle.
Right. I even said it in my post, like I'm not content with how my career ended in cross country, but I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah.
And if I can leave like that, that's that. I can't change it. If I keep going on in this life and I keep thinking like, oh, if I'm 10 years down the road and I'm thinking, what could I have done? That's a life I don't want to live.
Yeah. So.
But let's move on.
Yeah. No, I'm glad we had that though, because we wanted to talk about our races and then some prominent thoughts from like the race and trip, and we definitely had a lot of deep thoughts, deep chats after that, because we had like some high highs and some low lows, and it was interesting finding a balance between that and coming back to real life the next day. Some other D3 cross country storylines. Battleson Gunkel. I haven't talked to her much in person, honestly. We spoke a bit at the press conference the day before the race, which was super fun. Love that they're doing that.
Thought it was so funny that you were the only non-blonde girl up there.
Oh, yeah. I looked like an absolute goon. I was there in my beanie. Also, I got the microphone, and it sounded like I was yelling.
You did not need the microphone.
I did not need that microphone. But I know she battled some injury.
So exciting.
Oh, my gosh. That was one of the interviews that D3 Glory Days did with us. And, like, I grabbed that microphone. They're like, how do you feel? And I'm like, so excited. And it was so loud. You made me listen to it like 30 times. Anyway, Evelyn Battleson Gunkel battled some injuries at the start of the season, but came back, ran a really smart race for her team, which I thought was really cool. Like, didn't play it risky early because she knew she wanted to help the team scores as much as possible. Mo Bhatti, another really cool storyline, didn't make the meet last year, took second this year, so first time All-American in cross country. That's pretty cool. You speak to Christian Patska a bit.
He had some words before the start of the race, and just very good. Just a very, very, very nice human being. Funny guy. I haven't talked to him a whole lot, but I just know from like the guys I've talked to about him and stuff. Like another runner on Wisconsin's team, Whitewater's team, Dane Anderson and Gunnar Slender, and Justin. Talked to him a little bit. Like all those guys are really, really cool guys. They just all love to be around the sport and compete and just have a good time. And you can just tell from like Patska's like posts on Instagram and Strava and stuff. Like he's a hardworking guy that just likes to have fun. So I talked to him a little bit. There was this Instagram reel on, I think it was like NCAA D3 or something like that, and it was a video of him winning, and some guy whose name on it was like literally D3 fanboy, and he said, bro's literally 24 and he needs to graduate already. And Patska commented back on it. He said at D3 fanboy or whatever, he's like, I'm actually 22, little bro. I know numbers is hard for you. And that made me laugh so hard because I could just hear him saying it, and like I know he's just being like, you know, like get a life, dude. Like we're all just trying to like be our best and do our best, and then for people to just say stuff like that, like that man has gotten runner up twice, and he's even gotten runner up in, you know, the steeplechase. Like he's finished second a lot. He's very talented and very like one of the best D3 runners to ever do it. Insane athlete. But, you know, like he's got to have a lot of hunger for that. So this is definitely something that feels special to his heart because he's gotten second twice in a row.
Yeah.
To some really good athletes too. I mean, it was to Alex Phillip and Ethan Gregg.
Yeah.
And to be honest, Ethan Gregg last year ran like a once in a lifetime, once in a generational race. I mean, it was like the most beautiful race I've ever watched in my life. I was like, there's no way he's not winning. And the funny thing is, Patska closed on him like a mofo in the last 100 meters. and he didn't get him, but you know, if there was, you know, 200 more meters in that race, I think Patska gets him. So It's like he kind of was like me in that sense. Like this past nationals, like he grinded it out. Like even when it seemed like it wasn't possible for him to get first, he still believed. And so
yeah.
But anyways, my comment back, I commented on that line of comments on Instagram, and it was funny. He kind of gave me a little shout out, and it was a cool moment for me as somebody who's still like a little guy in the big pond of D3. But I was like, you know, at Christian Patska, like this guy's comment is honestly ridiculous. And then I said something along the lines of Christian Patska the GOAT. And then he commented on my comment and was like, the day that there's no more Noah Tobin fans is the day that I'm dead. With like 8 heart emojis. I was like, this is awesome. And then it was like the most liked comment on the whole thing. It was like by like Dan Anderson and like Nathan Tassie. I was like, you know what? I will take that. That's awesome. Yeah. Love those guys.
So after nationals, let's touch briefly on what's next. You mentioned that we're going to Grand Valley State for an indoor 5K December 7th. So that'll be exciting. Going to keep training until then. Then we'll take couple days off and then get the build going for indoor season. Since nationals, best run, worst run. My best run, day after nationals, I think was really fun. Worst run, 100% yesterday. That was one of the worst runs of my life. I'm so sorry. I got suckered into it because obviously I'm in St. Mary's and the man friend here wants to show me a new fun trail. And I was like, oh, let's go. I'm down, even though I was sick as crap. It started snowing, and it was the longest 6 miles of my life. I got back to the car and crashed out hard, but we made it. So
You killed it.
yeah, and then I took today off because I was cooked yesterday. Slept like all day, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. I didn't really see you a whole lot yesterday.
My eyes were very swollen. It was bad. So, do you have a best run, worst run off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I'd have to say best run. Not me like looking for it.
Off the top of my head, he literally whipped out
Strava. I'm sorry. I had to. Honestly, the long run after nationals was probably no. Honestly, no. It was my 10-miler the day before pre-meet, before nationals, like 2 days out. I ran 10 miles at like 6:39 pace, and I was kind of just cruising and having a good old.
Oh yeah, that was when I was at the YMCA swimming.
Right. That
really
run,
nice YMCA out there, by the way, in Indiana, Plainsfield, where we were.
Yeah. That was a good run, and then also today's little 9 miles in an hour. That was a fun one. Just like getting a little up pace, like doing like a little moderate run. Felt kind of good on the legs since I'm backing off the mileage as a whole. Worst run was probably, honestly, it was yesterday's run.
Oh my gosh,
pretty bad.
We can twin. Okay, brief gear update because we've been yapping a lot on this episode, but so here for it. You're buying new spikes. What you looking at? You're down to 2, but the one is sold out.
I want to get ons, but this sounds so lame, but I don't like the colorway they have. But then I also saw that was the only colorway they have and the only shoe they have, and it's sold out. And I kind of need new spikes for
next week.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna go with the Dragonfly Elites. It says they're good for 5 and 10K, and to be honest, for plans going forward, for indoor, obviously you're gonna need something more aggressive. So I'm thinking that I'm gonna go with the Elites on it.
Yeah.
It's my last year. I might as well just invest big time.
Send it. It's not your last year, let's be real. Last year of college.
Last year of collegiate running. So
I believe. You don't believe.
If you don't believe, nobody gonna believe.
You gotta get more use out of them spikes.
Also loving the green gear we got. I'm like
we got some cool gear before nationals.
It's probably the most green decked out I've ever been.
You've been calling them the green bean fits.
Yeah.
I vibe with it. My little gear update. I raced in my OG Adidas Adios Pros at the Turkey Trot. They're like my favorite carbon plate shoes I've ever tried, but I've also had them for almost 4 years now. They're like the OG like Adidas carbon plate shoe. And maybe it was because I was like super ill on Turkey Trot Day, but they also felt super dead. Like I felt like I was not getting anything out of those shoes.
I feel like sometimes with super shoes like that, they can feel good, and all of a sudden it's just like a quick drop off.
Oh, 100%.
Because once they're toast, they're toast.
I need to replace those. I don't know what I'm gonna get yet.
I told her she should get the Echo Booms.
Yeah, since I really like my Cloud Monsters at the moment. But maybe I'll find somewhere where I can try on the next gen of the Adidas, because I did really like those when I first got them.
That's also why I'm skeptical about getting the spikes, because I don't know if I should get a 9.5 or a 9, because I still feel like those cross country spikes were a tad bit big.
Maybe this warrants a shoe store trip.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about some running news and the Elite Turkey Trot race. It was the Manchester 4.737 miler.
Yeah.
Yeah. Edwin Kurgat took 3rd place, fresh off his victory at the Sound Running Cross Country Championships. Brian Barraza of Tin Man Elite, love his story because he's always kind of been an underdog. Took 7th. Everett Silva, you can talk about him because you're more in his corner, I guess.
I follow him on TikTok. He's a freaking stud. He's been around for a while, but
knew him first from the Ben Crawford videos in the COVID era.
Oh yeah, because when he was at
Portland,
yeah. But he's bounced around a little bit. He found his home at Oklahoma City.
think so.
It's an NAIA school, but he did well. He dominated at their national meet, and I think set a new national record for NAIA. But dude's a stud. Ran in this road race. I saw he was joking about it. He's like, got rolled, and there's like this bonus that you can get in the race.
Yeah, so there's a preem, I guess, where like if you're the first at the top of the hill, then you get a $1,000 like prize money basically.
It's like $1,000 if you're leading the race at the top of the hill.
But you have to finish in the top 10, which I think
to collect the money.
Yeah, but I think more road races need to model that. It's a lot more like how cycling is with like sprint points and points to earn different jerseys. It's because it encourages you to race the entire race instead of just sit and kick. So I think if more road races did that, that'd be huge for the sport. So
but sadly, he finished 13th, and he talked about that. He's like, so he didn't get his money. But we also know a guy, Mitchell Dervin. Yeah, I was
the runfluencer. Him and Amalia.
Yeah, he raced that race. He was in the elite field as well. He ran pretty insane. I think 22:31 for 4.73, and he finished 16th.
Yeah,
I believe.
So if you're into the world of TikTok running, there's Mitchell's finish for you.
Then there was the sound.
Yeah, sound running championships. Women's 8K. Emily Venters took the win in 26:02. Thought it was really interesting that the women raced in 8K, but I'm here for it. I think it's exciting to put them on the same.
It's kind of cool to compare them
to the men.
Yeah,
on the same exact course too.
It's like I see them run like 26:50, and I'm like, yo, that's pretty freaking solid. Like,
yeah, it gives you a lot of respect. So Emily Venters ran at Utah for her last bit of eligibility, but she was at Boise State in Colorado before then. So as a fellow transfer, I admire her persistence and resilience in the sport. But she took the dub. Cassie Parker, notable D3 alum from Loras, 26:50 for 8th place in the women's field. Men's 8K as well. We talked a bit about Edwin Kurgat, who had some fast turnaround between races, but he ran 22:51 for the win. Adam Fogg, the YouTuber from Drake University, but I think he's back in Great Britain now, took 10th in 23:33. If you're there for the YouTube, he probably made a video about it. Why don't you talk about our men's D3 studs in the field?
Oh yeah, it was freaking sick. We had what was it? We had Matthew Wilkinson, a guy who ran at Charleston University, and then he transferred to Minnesota his last year of eligibility, and then now he runs pro for Under Armour. He got 6th, and then we had Ethan Gregg, the egg. The goat, one of the big goats of D3, runs for Hanson Brooks now, and he got, I want to say 10th. 13th. And he went like 23:44, and Matthew Wilkinson was like 23:30s or faster or something like that.
23, yeah.
Yeah. So then
also shout out, congrats Ethan Gregg on getting engaged this week.
Oh yeah, that was freaking awesome.
Exciting stuff.
Especially as us being a same height couple. Good for them.
Shorties.
Me and Ethan are both short kings, so shout out to him for that. But no, it was pretty cool. Matt Wilkinson's a guy who I watched, he won the steeplechase back in 2021 outdoor nationals, and then he came back and he went under 14 minutes to take the dub in the men's 5K over Alex Phillip. And that was like the race that kind of introduced Alex Phillip. So he was the last person to hand it to Alex Phillip before Alex Phillip was Alex Phillip. So pretty cool storyline he's got there. And he went to D1 and he won Big Tens in the steeple and made it. And I think was a Division I All-American.
Now he's an Olympian.
Yeah, now he's an Olympian. Yeah.
Very exciting stuff.
Very cool story to watch. And those guys it's really cool to see them still doing their thing.
And then we don't want to talk too much about D1 and D2 cross country. As D3 runners, we think that we deserve more respect. And D1 and D2 get a lot of coverage, let's be honest. But at the end of the day, they're still human. They're still putting in the work just like us, still grinding. So we do have a few notable things that we want to talk about with them. BYU, the baby oil.
We just saw they were putting baby oil on before their race, and so saw a lot of funny comments about the Diddy way, BYU winning with the Diddy way, Diddy performance.
Hey, they swept. The men and women both won.
They did.
So that's exciting. Grace Hartman took 5th place in the women's field. She's from NC State, but she's a fellow Ohio gal. I actually raced against her a lot in high school. She's just a great human being to be around, always been super supportive, and I've loved staying in touch with her a bit here and there. Follow her on Instagram. She's got a bit of like an influencer account, like a lifestyle account called Taste by Grace, so gonna give her a shout out there. Also, the Providence women, I've followed cross country for so long, like since middle school, and Providence, they were really, really dominant for a while, but then kind of fell off. Their coach, Ray Treacy, I think has been there longer than any other coach in Division I NCAA right now for cross country. So yeah, their women used to be super dominant and then just kind of fell off the map for a bit, but not only did they make it back to the championship this year, but they were 3rd place. So first podium
That's
in
huge.
many, many years. Really cool to see. And I'm sure as a coach, that's really cool for him to witness like a whole new group of women coming in and being great again. Also, the Cedarville women in Division II, we wanted to shout them out because we raced against them quite a bit in cross country, but they took 17th place. We raced at the All Ohio Invite for cross country this year, hosted by them. They're very good typically. And Grand Valley State University women took 4th. They also had the individual winner, so we'll get a nice little showdown with them in the next week or so.
It's cool seeing Grand Valley's men get 5th as well, knowing that I know a couple guys that are on the team now. John Nice, really good guy for Otterbein. He's a grad student there, and he just missed out on making their nationals team or their postseason team. And looking at that, like he's a sub 24 guy, like he's a stud. So that team's just loaded. And then you had Finley, which as a school that recruited me, and I know a good amount of the guys that have gone there. Noah Fisher being his last year and leading that team to, what was it, 28th? But it was their first time, and I think in school history that they've ever gone to nationals. Finley's men. So shout out to them for making it for the first time. And I think Noah Fisher had a solid day. So,
you gonna speak on Graham Blanks at all?
Oh, it was just Graham Blake's doing his thing. Like, I mean, I wouldn't really say struggled early in the season, but it just wasn't, to me at least, as like an outsider looking in, didn't really look like
it didn't look like he was going to run away with it.
Didn't look like he was going to recreate what he did the previous season. And not a lot of people in Division I history have like won back-to-back titles.
Yeah.
So, and he's an American, so it's like not a lot of Americans have won back-to-back. Did Connor Mance win back-to-back?
I think he did. But that was also weird because the one was the COVID year when it was the winter season, so it was a very limited field.
Right. But it's hard to do, impressive. And that's awesome. And he did run away with it. Now the New Mexico guy lost his shoe. He had an amazing race.
that was really.
Still, I mean, there was a lot of really talented guys in that race.
New Mexico men and women had a really great season. Usually their women have been really strong and their men have kind of struggled a bit, unless you talk about Josh Kerr, and that used to be all people knew about men's New Mexico distance running. Right. But anyway, I think that's our quick little rundown of the running events of the week. We do want to close things out with some Strava shout-outs. We touched on it earlier, but I want to shout out your Nationals race post. I think it was very, very well said and heartfelt, and you spent like the whole 3-hour car trip writing it, but it was really good. And like, I love the Bible verse that you included about how you finished the race. And I don't know the exact like verse in the Bible where you found it, but it fit your post very well. And I also
Timothy.
Yeah, I also loved how you mentioned that like you used to like think it was like cheesy when people would be like, "Oh, but I have God in my life, so it's fine," because it almost seems like an excuse, or like you said, a cop out. Like you kind of take solace in that, like if the results don't go your way. But I think at the end of the day, we've both grown a lot in that this season, and come to see like what's important in life. And your Strava post shares that, but I also like how you ended it saying like it might be the end of like college cross country, but this isn't the end. Like it's not a goodbye, it's a see you later. Because I think we both know there's a lot more in store for your running career and the trails.
Yeah.
The trails.
Well, it's like we talked about
Real
that a
cross
lot.
country.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot, and about opportunities after, but also like, I'd be lying if I didn't take, inspiration from other people's posts also. And, Ryan Champa from John Carroll kind of said the same thing. It's not a goodbye. This is just a see you later. And so like, I agree. I completely agree with that. So give him credit for, realizing that too. But I'll go into My Strava shout out is to, I guess I'm just a Patska fan right now. I don't know. He gave me that shout out. I'm like, oh, but I like those guys are awesome. But his nationals post, and I just want to elaborate. Like he always has like a funny like line with all of his Stravas. Like it just, I don't.
Oh my gosh, she's literally pulling it up right now.
I have to pull it up because some of his posts just like crack me up. This one is a little more like kind of serious. The title is "I Will Not Be Denied," and then he said, "Use some Larry Bird magic today and got the dub. Happy the boys got what they wanted. Never trusted a core group of runners more in my life than them right now," and that's awesome. And he posted the Jameis Winston meme.
Yeah,
the horse is prepared for battle, but victory comes from the Lord.
We talked about that a lot before the race too.
And then there was a guy. Oh my gosh! I don't know who, one of his friends or something, said "Team Trophy Baby" and like sent him probably like a Snapchat video, and he's like going nuts. But in this video, he is wearing, I think, either a T-shirt or a sweatshirt, and it has like Justin on it, Dan Anderson, Christian Patska, Gunner, like a lot of the big hitters from Wisconsin Whitewater.
But it kind of looks like one of those T-shirts you would find in like a Flying J or like a truck stop with like some dogs on it or a rock.
It's like a retro, like maybe like if the Bulls players from like the Chicago Bulls when Michael Jordan was on it, like would have like Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman and Michael Jordan on it. Like it's
we'll have to post it on the Instagram for the post to accompany this episode.
We'll have to, because if Christian, if you're listening to this podcast, or Dan, or any of the other Gunner, or any of the other Wisconsin Whitewater boys, I want one of those shirts. I would love one
mail
of those shirts.
Where can they mail it? Oh, tell people where they can mail us stuff. This is so cool.
1870 Quaker Way, Wilmington, Ohio.
Heck yeah.
45177 is the zip code. Yeah, mail us to it. Put my name on it, or put my pile box. 1070 is my pile box. So if you want to mail me stuff, please mail me stuff. I would love letters or
you're gonna get secret admirers. The Noah Tobin fan club is gonna
it's me emerging.
Okay,
we'll have to talk about that in another podcast.
Because this podcast has gone so long, but I'm so here for it.
We have a lot of stuff to talk about.
We're yappers.
This is why we're yappers. This is why we can't let it be more than a week between episodes.
Is there anything you want to leave the people with? You always have a good closing statement.
Let's see if I can make something up. You're always closer than you think you are to the success that you've always wanted. And you're always going to be in a place in the present that you wish you would have been in the past. So always keep moving forward.
I thought you were going to say always keep pressing.
Always keep pressing.
I thoroughly enjoyed every second watching you think those words through in your head as you spoke them, but it came out really great. So, alrighty guys, that's it for this week's episode. Tune in next week for
some Grand Valley.
That'll be maybe right before Grand Valley. Depends on when we race. Maybe right after. Maybe we'll record it in the car with Ron.
Ooh, yeah, we could.
He'd love that.
Or we could. You guys let us know if you'd like this. We could bring on a special guest, Simon Hayes, maybe.
Oh, possibly. Alrighty, well that's it, you guys. We will catch you on the flip.